Seas have, as well as skies, sun, moon, and stars, as well as air, swallows, and rooks, and stairs, as well as earth, vines, roses, nettles, millions, pinks, gilliflowers, mushrooms, and many millions, of other plants, lance, more rare and strange than these, as very fishes living in the seas, and also rams, calves, horses, hares, and hogs, wolves, lions, urchins, elephants, and dogs. Ye men and maids, in which I more admire, the mitred bishops and the cowled friar, whereof examples, but a few years since, were shewn the Norways and Polonian prince. Guillaume du Bartas, The Weekend or Creation of the World. With perhaps the exception of outer space, there is no more mysterious place than the depths of the ocean, home to strange and alien creatures, plants, and unique biomes, unlike any seen on the surface. Throughout history, tales of strange and dangerous creatures emerging from the depths have captivated men, with a deep holding symbolic significance, whether as a primordial sea or the darkest regions of hell. From the Leviathan to sea monsters swallowing Jonah, or the beasts of Revelation, the sea and its mysteries have both captivated and terrified men throughout the ages. The passage from the beginning is part of the poem The Weekend or Creation of the World, in which the poet Guillaume du Bartas makes the seas into a great mirror. As the skies and earth have their birds, flowers, and assorted creatures, so too do the seas. Even the mitred bishop and the cowled friar have a nautical counterpart. While one might assume this to be a fanciful description, indeed the latter was caught off the coasts of Norway, and the former was brought before Sigismund, King of Poland. Let's talk about these strange creatures from the sea, from more bestial to human. The sea monk, the bishop fish, the original tale The Little Mermaid, and that fairy tale's inspiration from the life of an Irish saint. In Norway, near the city of Den Ellepak, in the region of Dizund, was found another monster, or ocean fish, that the people called the monkfish, the illustration of which you may have seen here. They say that he lived in silence for 3 days, and that he did not utter a word except some sighs, expressed in great sorrow and longing. Pierre Bellon de Aqua Tilibus. The sea monk was a strange creature caught in the stormy seas of Norway. It appeared to have a human face, but hardy like that of a peasant, with a smooth, clean-cut face, fair hair, shaved in the manner of a monk's tonsure. Its shoulders appeared covered with the hood of a monk, which was variegated with black and red spots. The hood ended in a skirt like the loincloth used to cover the waist and thighs. It had 2 long fins for arms, its lowest part ending in a broad tail, and the middle being much wider, shaped like a monk's habit. The particular creature was captured in the Sound in 1550 in a herring's fisher's net. The creature was said to have torn or mutilated limbs, indistinctly defined under a scaly covering, and was brought to Christian III, the then King of Denmark and Norway. The king gave the order that the creature to be buried deep underground, quote, to hinder indiscreet talk among the ignorant, whose minds are always perturbed by what is new. News of the creature spread among the philosophers and intellectuals of the time, and Christian III sent images of the creature to the royal courts of Europe, including Queen Margaret and the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V when he was in Spain. Guillaume Rondelet, professor of medicine at the University of Montpellier, recorded known information about the sea monk in his book about marine fish. While he was skeptical about the story of the strange creature, and harbored doubts about the strange fish that caught the attention of both the academic and royal courts, he was hesitant to discount it entirely, due to having received the image from Queen Margaret, whom he describes as, quote, so heaped up with the praises of the splendor of her race, of intelligence, of learning, of virtue, of the highest piety, that she surpassed all the respected and illustrious women of her age. end quote. And she had received the image from a claimed eyewitness of the creature. Likewise, Rondelet found other reports of such a or similar creature in the classical authors, such as Pliny or another account coming from Moscow, which described across the Tokman River a monstrous type of people live. Some were like animals, covered in fur or having dog heads, others devoid of a neck or legs, and in the Tokman itself were fish, with the head, eyes, mouths, hands, feet, and other parts of the body like that of the form of a man. But they were voiceless like all other kinds of fish and were, allegedly, quite tasty as food. And while the belief of his queen patron and supporting testimony from classic authors and reports from the East held his tongue from completely discounting it, Rondelet, however, was frustrated when an associate of his, Gisbert the physician, showed him a picture of the monster which was sent to Rome from Norway, which had differed from the image he received, and thus he concluded that the painters must have embellished their depictions to make it more wonderful in appearance. Rondelet describes the Roman depiction as having more of a frog's head than that of a man's, and behind the head there were parts on the inside, wide, corresponding to the shoulder blades of men, which were moved by muscles, which appeared like the figure of a monk's hood. He said that this depiction, rather than covered in scales, appeared harder and possessing wrinkled skin, more akin to that of a sea lion than a fish. Rondelet accounts another image of the creature, this time from Germany, which depicted its face as, quote, black as that of an Ethiopian. As of the sea monk, it seemed to be a type of creature rather than a singular entity, as there were reports of one being caught in the French Ocean near Bordeaux, and also seen several times in the British Sea. The British sea monk was described as having white skin on the skull, and around it a black circle, like the freshly shaved head of a monk, but possessing the mouth and jaws of that like a fish. It played near the shores, where it would attract people with its games, and bade those who saw it to come into the sea, wherein, once close enough, it entrapped them, dragging them into the depths, and then eating their flesh. So what exactly was the sea monk? The repeated references and sightings, captivating both the academic and royal spheres of Europe, give little reason to assume it was pure imagination. Some speculate that it may have been a squid of sorts, as its features matched that of a giant squid, such as the red and black spots and appearing scaleless, with perhaps the German sea monk's black face being an ink sac under the skin. However, others theorize that it was what is known as a Jenny Hanover, a hoax creature composed from the body parts of dead sea creatures. What is known is that, as anyone aware of Europe in the 16th century would know, the continent was embroiled in Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation. Christian III had declared Lutheranism as the state religion, and then pursued a policy of maintaining peace for his country, and perhaps, real or fake, his sending of the reports of this strange creature to the royal courts of Europe served to raise the esteem of Denmark. And it should be noted that a similar creature exists in the folklore of Japan, a yokai by the name of the Umibozu, which translates to sea monk. The yokai is named as such for its rounded head resembling that of the shaved head of a Buddhist monk. However, aside from its appearance and name, it does not seem to have any connection to Buddhism or any other religion. The Umibozu appears as a dark, inky black figure, with piercing round eyes, from a few meters tall to 10 meters in length, with long, stretching tentacles which twist together into arms and finger-like appendages at the end. Their lower body is a complete mystery. In a single account, they even have catfish-like whisker appendages on their face. They were said to be able to expand and contract at will, with a jellyfish-like shape that erects into the shape of man, appearing to ships and sailors in calm seas. but which would quickly become stormy and violent once the Umibozu appeared. The creature would then latch onto the ships or begin to overturn or wreck the ship. They are known to dislike tobacco smoke, which could allow one to escape. The Umibozu may demand a bucket or barrel, for which it will drown the sailors by flooding the hull and sinking the ship with, though if given a bottomless bucket, it will become confused while attempting to collect water from it, allowing the sailors to escape. Whereas the sea monk was clearly a sea creature of some sort, resembling a man, the bishopfish displayed signs of sapience and understanding. Unlike the sea monk, the bishopfish only seems to have one siding, which eventually led it to being equated with the sea monk itself, with the descriptions and stories mixing together. The bishopfish is described as having scaly skin, resembling a humanoid sea dweller, with an elongated dome head, like that of a bishop's mitre, and human-like face. However, earlier descriptions have it resemble less like a human, with a fin instead resembling a human's beard. Its hands were tentacles with finger-like appendages, and its legs leading to featureless and toeless feet. It had a membrane or fin of sorts on its back, which resembled that of a bishop's vestments. Rondelet had received a report from Gisbert, the German physician, who he himself had received from Amsterdam with letters. He affirmed that in 1531, a sea monster was seen and caught in the Baltic Sea near Poland. It was caught and seemed dressed like a bishop, and it was thus brought to the King of Poland, Sigismund I. The bishopfish made certain signs to show that it was desirous to return to the sea, and when brought to the water, it immediately threw itself in and returned into the depths. Rondelet admits to omitting other details of the encounter, which he considered to be legendary and too fantastical, claiming that the vanity of men causes them to add details to things already wonderful enough. Having received an image of the creature, he can neither confirm nor deny its truthfulness. Later accounts mention the bishopfish signing and appealing to a group of Catholic bishops present when Sigismund desired to keep it as a pet. When it departed into the sea, they claim it had made a sign of benediction before diving below. While these may have been fantastical additions to the original tale, they might also be the original details that Rondelet had omitted. What was the basis for this bishopfish? Just like the sea monk, proposals of being a Jenny Hanover or a misidentified creature such as another squid or an angel shark are suggested. However, unlike the sea monk, the bishopfish showed signs of intelligence and actively communicated with the Polish court, and if later editions are to be believed, possessed a Christian faith itself. And while perhaps a curious coincidence, it might be worth to look at the first recorded merman or fishman in history as a comparison. Uana or Oannes, the respective Sumerian and Greek names, for the first of the Apkallu, a set of 7 divine sages recorded in Near Eastern mythology. Now, what exactly are the Apkallu and Oannes specifically? Much of the ancient Mesopotamian religion has been lost to time. However, Berosus, a Chaldean priest of Bel, contemporary with Alexander the Great, had compiled a history of Babylon, using well-preserved texts kept at Babylon, texts which are lost to us today, that contain the histories of the heavens and of the seas, of the birth of mankind and of the kings, and the memorable actions which they had achieved according to the Babylonian religion. Ironically enough, Berosus's history of Babylon is lost to us today as well. However, fragments have been preserved in the writings of the classical authors such as Pliny, Josephus, Eusebius, and Alexander Polyhistor. It is Alexander's fragments that we'll look at today. Quote, "At Babylon there was, in these times, a great resort of people of various nations, who inhabited Chaldea, and lived in a lawless manner like the beasts of the field. In the first year there appeared, from that part of the Erythraean Sea, which borders upon Babylonia, an animal endowed with reason, by name Oannes, whose whole body, according to the account of Apollodorus, was that of a fish, and under the fish's head he had another head, with feet also below, similar to those of a man, subjoined to a fish's tail. His voice too and language was articulate and human, and a representation of him is preserved even to this day. This being was accustomed to pass the day among men, but took no food at that season, and he gave them an insight into letters and sciences and arts of every kind. He taught them to construct cities, to found temples, to compile laws, and explain to them the principles of geometrical knowledge. He made them distinguish the seeds of the earth, and shewed them how to collect the fruits. In short, he instructed them in everything which could tend to soften manners and humanize their lives. From that time, nothing material has been added by way of improvement to his instructions. And when the sun had set, this being Oannes retired again to the sea, and passed the night in the deep, for he was amphibious. After this, there appeared other animals like Oannes, of which Berosus proposes to give an account when he comes to the history of the kings." End quote. Oannes, by his Sumerian name, is referenced as well in the Uruk list of kings and sages, Uruk being one of the oldest cities in history. The list itself gives the name of a king, coupled with his divine sage. The first line states, "During the reign of Ialu the king, Uana was sage." After which, 6 more pairs of kings and divine sages follows, before the list is interrupted with the line, "Then the flood had swept over." Following the flood, the list continues, though the post-Diluvian kings are now paired with human scholars rather than the divine sages of those who ruled before the flood. For those familiar with the antediluvian account of Genesis and Enochian literature, the story of Oannes and the sages of Uruk should sound familiar to the rebellious angels who descended from heaven to earth. Watchers, as they are called in the Book of Enoch, who sought to manipulate man in his infancy. Instead of spirits descending from heaven, the Mesopotamians gave them the form as fishmen, rising up from the depths. Whereas the Babylonians viewed these Apkallu sages as bringing order to the wild and untamed men, the Christian understanding views the Watchers as bestowing and teaching various arts to the still immature mankind, to their detriment, like giving a kitchen knife and a flamethrower to a toddler. But back to the topic at hand. What do the Apkallu, the Babylonian mermen counterparts to the Watchers, have to do with the bishopfish? Well, nothing, actually, aside from the curious resemblance between the two. However, if one wanted to draw a connection, imagine one of the Apkallu confined to the depths of the ocean as a result of the flood, and drifting through the seas until being dragged up from the Baltic Sea by men. After the advent of the cross, now rendering the powers of rebellious spirits inert and their voices mute, now confused with and compared to the very princes of the church which had neutered him. The impotent Apkallu could only motion its desire to return to its watery prison, preferring that to being the pet and plaything of the Catholic King of Poland. Or perhaps, if the more fanciful tellings are to be believed, it was some sort of strange fish being who recognized the other bishops as his peers, itself worshipping the King of Heaven. Or maybe it really was a hoax, but that's boring. The fun thing about these creatures of folklore is that they're all open to suggestion, speculation, new theories, despite what Rondelet said about the vanity of men.
The Church of the Virgin of Dolores, built back in 1898, but more than 4 decades ago, flooded, along with the tiny town of El Zangaro, by a dam that was built to make this reservoir.
There are still some people that tell us about experiences that they have lived that happened in this church because they were baptized or they received a religious ceremony. It is an important symbol within the culture that we have here in Guanajuato.
Now, as an epic drought ravages Mexico, the church is rising from the deep.
While Awanis may be the first example in history of a merperson, despite his divine origins, he is not the most famous or well-known. Needless to say, that honor goes to the Little Mermaid. While mention of the Little Mermaid today would most likely conjure thoughts of Disney's adaptations, whether the live-action or the 80s animated version, the original fairy tale was written by the Danish author Hans Christian Andersen in 1837, with, as to be expected, notable differences. The most important difference, I would say, is that the titular mermaid's desire stems not from love, but the ultimate longing for an immortal and human soul, giving it a quite explicit Christian theme. Likewise, as often the case when it comes to fairy tales, there isn't a real antagonist in the story. The sea witch is more of a neutral figure or active enabler for the plans of the mermaid. For those who haven't read the original fairy tale, in brief, the story opens with describing where the sea folk dwell, deeper than any anchor rope would go, with all manner of fish and plants. At the deepest part of the ocean rose the palace of the Sea King, with walls of coral, windows of amber, and a roof of mussel shells that open and close with the tides. The king was a widower of many years, and his mother kept the household, who was especially fond of her 6 granddaughters. The youngest of the 6 was noted for her beauty, skin a pale white, soft and tender as a rose petal, deep blue eyes, and, as the others, a fish tail instead of a pair of legs. Each of the daughters had a garden plot to do with whatever they wished, and the youngest only grew flowers as red as the sun itself. When her sisters began decorating their gardens with oddities found from sunken ships, she only allowed her flowers and a marble statue of a handsome boy that had sunk to the bottom of the sea, carved in pure white marble. The youngest loved nothing more than to listen to her grandmother tell her about the world of men above them, about the ships, the cities, the people and animals. She had longed to smell the sweet, fragrant flowers of the world above, as the flowers of the sea had no scent. And how nice it would be to hear the singing of the fish who lived in the trees above the surface. Each sister was 1 year older than the sister she preceded, and on her 15th birthday, she would be allowed to swim to the surface, to sit on the rocks in the moonlight and watch the ships sail by, and the woods and towns of men. They would each have to wait their turn, but promise to tell the others what she saw, with the youngest having to wait for a full 5 years, who was the most eager of them all. The eldest sister returned from her venture to the surface and told the rest about the many marvelous things, but the most marvelous being lying in the sand in the moonlight and gazing at a large city on the shore, where the lights twinkled like stars, and listening to the sounds of the city, from the music to the chatter and clamor of the carriages, to the ringing of church bells from the many church towers and spires. The youngest would look out her window at night, gazing up at the surface and thinking of that great city. The next years followed the same pattern of her sisters, each rising to the surface, then telling the others what they experienced. The second described the beauty of the sunset, the gold of the heavens and clouds, tinted red and violet overhead. The third, most bold, told them of how she swam up a river that flowed into the ocean, and saw the green hills and banners in the woods, and came across a school of human children playing in the river, who took fright and ran when she had wanted to play with them, herself fleeing back into the sea when a black dog barked at her. She said she would never forget the human children who could swim, and yet they did not have fishtails. The fourth stayed in the rough waves, away from the shore, and described the sky above as like a glass dome overhead, and the dolphins and whales who stayed near the surface, spouting water like hundreds of fountains. The fifth's birthday was in winter, so she saw sights unlike the other four, seeing enormous icebergs drifting, glistening like pearls, yet larger than any steeple built by men. She sat upon the largest she found, and the ships that approached quickly sailed away, in fear when they saw her sitting there, her long hair blowing in the wind. While each sister initially enjoyed their first rising out of the sea, now having permission to go wherever they liked, they had become indifferent and preferred their home at the bottom of the sea. Oftentimes, the five would lock arms and swim to the surface when a storm began to brew, anticipating a shipwreck, and they would sing seductively about the beauties of the bottom of the ocean, hoping to overcome the prejudices and fears of the sailors who would never come down to them. But the only men who reached the Sea King's palace were dead. During these nights, the youngest would weep without tears, for a mermaid has no tears, longing she was of age to know the world above. Upon her 15th birthday, her grandmother adorned her with a wreath of white lilies, each petal made of a pearl, and then affixed 8 large oysters to her tail, and, despite the pain, her grandmother told her to keep up appearances, which signify her high rank. The sun had set by the time she reached the surface, but the clouds still glistened gold. She came upon a great ship with 3 masts, idling since there was no wind. There was music and singing on the ship, with hundreds of bright lanterns. The Little Mermaid swam to the windows of the main cabin, watching the people inside, and spotting a handsome young prince with big dark eyes, who could not be much older than she was. The cause of the celebration was the prince's birthday as well. Rockets lit off from the ship deck into the sky, and the lights fell like stars, the mermaid never having seen fireworks before. Despite the festivities, the mermaid kept her eyes on the handsome prince, but as the night grew darker, a storm began to brew, and the waves grew turbulent. While the rough waves were fun for the mermaid, it was not so for the sailors, and the ship began to tear apart. When the ship tore in half, she saw the prince sink down below, at first being joyful that he would join her under the waves, then recalling that humans could not survive under the sea. Exhausted from swimming, the prince closed his eyes as the Little Mermaid took him in her arms, holding his head above the water and letting the waves take them wherever they went. At daybreak, the storm ended and the Little Mermaid kissed the prince's forehead and stroked his wet hair, thinking how he looked like the marble statue in her garden. She kissed him again and hoped he would live. She swam to the shore, keeping his head above the water, and saw a church, or perhaps a convent, with orange and lemon trees growing near it. The bells of the white building began to ring, and several young girls came out into the garden. Covering her hair and shoulders with foam so that no one could see her, she brought the prince to the shore and watched to see who would find him. While initially frightened, one of the girls found him and called more people, and the prince slowly woke and smiled at those around him. The mermaid, however, felt unhappy that he was not smiling at her, since he did not know that she had saved him. Diving sadly into the water, she returned to the palace. While she had always been quiet and wistful, she became more so and refused to tell her sisters what she saw above the waves. She let her garden become wild, with her only consolation being the statue that looked like the prince. She eventually shared what had happened with her sister, and the story spread, reaching another mermaid who was aware of the prince and where his palace and kingdom were. Learning where the prince lived, she ventured closer than any of her sisters had ever dared, spending many nights in the river below the prince's balcony, gazing at him from below and listening to the people speak of how kind he was. This made her proud to be the one who saved him, and often thought of her embrace and tenderness towards him. The more time she spent above the surface, the more she liked humans and longed to live with them. Their world seemed wider than her own, skimming over seas, climbing the heights of mountains, their lands stretching further than she could see. While her sisters could not answer her questions, she came to her grandmother to inquire all about the upper world. "If human beings are not drowned," asked Little Mermaid, "can they live forever? Do they never die as we do here in the sea?" Her grandmother explained that men do indeed die as they do, but much sooner. But while mermaids may live up to 300 years old, when they die they cease to exist, melting into foam on the surface of the sea, without even a grave below. Not having immortal souls, when they die they never live again, in contrast to humans, who have a soul that lives forever, even after the body had become dust. And just as the mermaids rise up from the waters to see the land of the earth, the human soul rises up through the air and stars to see glorious regions which the mermaids will never see. "Why have we not an immortal soul?" asked the Little Mermaid mournfully. "I would gladly give up all the hundreds of years I have yet to live, to be a human being only for one day and to have the hope of knowing the happiness of the glorious world above the stars." "You must not think of that," said the old woman. "We feel ourselves to be much happier and much better off than human beings." "So I shall die," said the Little Mermaid, "and as the foam of the sea I shall be driven about, never again to hear the music of the waves, or to see the pretty flowers, nor the red sun. Is there anything I can do to win an immortal soul?" "No," said the old woman. "Unless a man were to love you so much that you were more to him than his mother or father, and if all his thoughts and all his love were fixed upon you, and the priest placed his right hand in yours, and he promised to be true to you here and hereafter, then his soul would glide into your body, and you would obtain a share in the future happiness of mankind. He would give you a soul, and retain his own as well. But this can never happen. Your fish's tail, which amongst us is considered so beautiful, is thought on earth to be quite ugly. They do not know any better, and they think it necessary to have two stout props, which they call legs, in order to be handsome." And while the Little Mermaid was sad at her fate, her grandmother told her to enjoy the 300 years she had, and to enjoy herself at the ball that evening. The ball was a glorious event ever to have been seen on earth, surrounded by the beauty of the palace and the countless fish with colored scales. The mermaids and the mermen sang and each danced to his or her own entrancing songs, with the Little Mermaid's voice being the sweetest of them all, more fair than any other voice above or below the sea. And while she was happy, for she knew that she had the loveliest voice, her thoughts returned to the upper world, the prince, and her sorrow that she did not have an immortal soul as he did. Leaving the party, she returned to her garden, and heard the sound of a horn through the water, assuming that the prince had set sail again. She decided to visit the Sea Witch for advice and for help. The Sea Witch's abode was a barren place, where no flowers nor seaweed grew, and whirlpools raged in front of the witch's dwelling. The Little Mermaid passed through the hot mire of the witch's peat marsh, and arrived at the witch's hut in the middle of a strange forest, where all trees were polyps, half plant, half animal, appearing like 100-headed snakes growing out of the soil, their branches like wriggling worms seeking to grasp whatever they could grab. Terrified, the Little Mermaid almost turned back, but remembered the prince and the souls of men, and swam faster than the polyps could catch her. She saw each had something it caught in their tentacles: the white bones of men who had drowned, ship rudders, seamen's chests, and land animals. The most terrifying of all, a little mermaid whom they had caught and strangled. Beyond the polyps' forest, a house built of the bones of shipwrecked men sat in a large muddy clearing, circled by water snakes. The sea witch sat as the snakes crawled about her, and she fed a toad out of her mouth, as a mother bird would her chicks. "I know what you want," said the sea witch. "It is very stupid of you, but you shall have your way, and it will bring you sorrow, my pretty little princess. You want to get rid of your fish's tail and to have two supports instead of it, like human beings on earth, so that the young prince may fall in love with you, and you may have an immortal soul." Then the witch laughed so loudly and disgustingly that the toad and the snakes fell to the ground and lay there, wriggling about. "You are but just in time," said the witch, "for after sunrise tomorrow, I should not be able to help you till the end of the year. I will prepare a draft for you, with which you must swim to land tomorrow before sunrise, and sit down on the shore and drink it. Your tail will disappear and shrink up into what mankind calls legs, and you will feel great pain as if a sword were passing through you, but all who see you will say that you are the prettiest little human being they ever saw. You will still have the same floating gracefulness of movement, and no dancer will ever tread so lightly, but every step you take you will feel as if you were treading upon sharp knives, and that the blood must flow. If you will bear all of this, I will help you." "Yes, I will," said the little mermaid in a trembling voice, as she thought of the prince and the immortal soul. "But think again," said the witch, "for when your shape has become like a human being, you can no longer be a mermaid. You will never return through the water to your sisters, or to your father's palace again. And if you do not win the love of a prince, so that he is willing to forget his father and mother for your sake, and to love you with his whole soul, and allow the priest to join your hands that you may be man and wife, then you will never have an immortal soul. The first morning after he marries another, your heart will break, and you will become foam on the crest of the waves." "But I must be paid also," said the witch, "and it is not a trifle that I ask. You have the sweetest voice of any who dwell here in the depth of the sea, and you believe that you will be able to charm the prince with it also. But this voice you must give to me. The best thing you possess will have I for the price of my draft. My own blood must be mixed with it, that it may be sharp as a two-edged sword." "But if you take my voice," said the little mermaid, "what is left for me?" "Your beautiful form, your graceful walk, your expressive eyes. Surely with these you can enchant a man's heart. Well, have you lost courage? Put out your little tongue that I may cut it off as my payment. Then you shall have the powerful draft." "It shall be," said the little mermaid. "Cleanliness is a good thing," the witch said, hanging her cauldron over the flames, and scoured the pot with her snakes. She pricked her chest, and a black blood splashed into the pot. Steam swirling up into terrifying shapes, and the witch continued to toss in new ingredients, and the cauldron boiled with the sound of a crocodile shedding tears. And when the draft was complete, it was as clear as the purest of water. "There's your draft," and the witch cut out the tongue of the little mermaid, who could neither talk nor sing. The little mermaid returned to the palace, now quiet, and assumed everyone to be sleeping. She then decided to leave home forever, taking a flower from each of her sister's gardens and swimming to the surface. Reaching the prince's palace again, she climbed the marble steps of the palace and swallowed the bitter draught. It felt like a two-edged sword struck through her body, and she fell asleep as if dead. When the sun rose, she awoke to a flash of pain and saw the prince standing over her, gazing at her with his dark eyes. She noticed her tail was gone and replaced with a pair of the loveliest white legs any maid could desire. She was naked, so she clothed herself in her long hair. While she could not answer any of his questions, he led her into the palace, each footstep like walking on the blades of sharp knives, with the grace and lightness of a bubble of the sea. She was clothed beautifully, and the prince with his royal parents sat as slaves appeared to sing before them. The prince smiled and clapped his hands at the sweet singing, which saddened her, knowing she had a more sweet voice. If only he knew I parted with my voice forever, so that I could be near him. When the slaves began to dance, she lifted herself up and danced across the floor, more gracefully than they had ever seen before, each movement showing off her beauty more and more, and her eyes touched the heart of the prince more than the slaves' singing. He called her his dear little foundling. She danced for him again and again, despite the feeling of treading on steel blades, and the prince said he would keep her with him always, and she'd always have a velvet pillow to sleep on outside his door. He took her everywhere, horseback riding, hiking up high mountains, wherever he went. At night, while others slept, she returned to the sea to cool her burning feet. And one night, her sisters came arm in arm, singing, and she held out her hand to them. They realized it was her, and told her how unhappy she had made them all, and resolved to see her every night after that. One time, her father and grandmother even came to see her. As the days passed, she became more and more dear to the prince, who had come to love her as a child, though never considered making her his queen. "Don't you love me best of all?" The little mermaid's eyes seemed to question him. When he took her in his arms, he kissed her lovely forehead. "Yes, you are most dear to me," said the prince, "for you have the kindest heart. You love me more than anyone else does." He recounted the night of the shipwreck, saying how much she resembled a young girl from the temple who had saved his life. And it was only that girl from the temple he could ever love. But as she belongs to the temple, he was fortunate he had her instead. And thus she was saddened, knowing that she had been the one to save him. "I am forced to make this journey," he told her. "I must visit the beautiful princess, for this is my parents' wish. But they would not have me bring her home as my bride against my will, and I can never love her. She does not resemble the lovely maiden in the temple, as you do, and if I were to choose a bride, I would sooner choose you, my dear mute foundling with those telling eyes of yours." And he kissed her on the mouth, fingered her long hair, and laid his head against her heart, so that she came to dream of mortal happiness and an immortal soul. Taking her aboard their ship to the neighboring kingdom, he told her stories of storms, of ships becalmed, of strange deep-sea fish, and of the wonders the divers had seen. She smiled at such stories, for no one knew about the bottom of the sea as well as she did. Her sisters rose from the sea to watch the ship, and she waved, wanting them to know that she was happy. As the ship arrived in the harbor, the church bells rang and trumpets sounded, but the princess had yet to appear. It was said that she had been raised in some far-off sacred temple, where she was taught the royal virtues. And when the princess arrived, she had an exquisite figure, clear and fair skin, dark long lashes, and deep blue eyes. "It was you," the prince cried. "You were the one who saved me when I lay like a dead man beside the sea." He clasped the blushing bride of his choice in his arms. "Oh, I am happier than a man should be," he told his little mermaid. "My fondest dream, that which I never dared to hope, has come true. You shall share in my great joy, for you love me more than anyone does." The little mermaid kissed his hand and felt that her heart was beginning to break. For the morning after his wedding day would see her dead and turned into watery foam. The day of the wedding came, and all the church bells rang out, and heralds rode through the streets to announce the wedding. Upon every altar, sweet-scented oils were burned in costly silver lamps. The priests swung their censers, and bride and bridegroom joined their hands, and the bishop blessed their marriage. The little mermaid, clothed in silk and cloth of gold, held the bride's train, but she was deaf to the wedding march and blind to the holy ritual. Her thought turned on her last night upon the earth, and all that she had lost in this world. That night, the bride and bridegroom went aboard the ship, where the couple were to sleep on that calm night. The ship, lavishly adorned, seemed to glide across the calm waters. As the mariners danced, she fondly remembered watching such happiness from the sea, and joined in the merriment, having danced more wonderfully than she had before to cheers. Though her feet felt as if they were pierced with daggers, she could not feel it, for the pain in her heart was greater still, knowing that this was the last evening she would ever see him, for whom she had forsaken her home and family for whom she had sacrificed her lovely voice and suffered such constant torment, while he knew nothing of all these things. It was the last night that she would breathe the same air as him, or look upon deep waters or the star fields of the blue sky. A never-ending night, without thought, without dreams, awaited her who had no soul and could not get one. The merrymaking lasted long after midnight, and yet she laughed and danced on despite the thought of death she carried in her heart. The prince kissed his beautiful bride, and she toyed with his coal black hair. Hand in hand, they went to rest in the magnificent pavilion. As the ship quieted and all went to sleep, only the Little Mermaid and the helmsman remained on the deck, and she peered over the side, waiting for the break of first light, knowing the flash of the sun would strike her dead. Then she saw her sisters rise from the waves, as pale as she was, yet without their lovely long hair which used to blow in the breeze. "We have given our hair to the witch," they said, "so that she would send you help and save you from death tonight. She gave us a knife, and here it is. See the sharp blade. Before the sun rises, you must strike it into the prince's heart, and when his warm blood bathes your feet, they will grow together and become a fishtail, and you will be a mermaid again, able to come back to us into the sea, and live out your 300 years before you die, and turn into dead salt, sea foam. Make haste! He or you must die before sunrise. Our old grandmother is so grief-stricken that her white hair is falling fast, just as ours did under the witch's scissors. Kill the prince and come back to us. Hurry, hurry. See the red glow in the heavens? In a few minutes the sun will rise, and you must die." So saying, they gave a strange, deep sigh and sank beneath the waves. Knife in hand, the Little Mermaid came to the tent of the prince and princess, her head asleep on the prince's chest. She bent down and kissed his forehead, then turned to look at the sky, quickly reddening at the dawn's approach. The prince murmured the name of his bride in his sleep, and the Little Mermaid threw the knife away from her into the waves. Where it fell, the waves reddened, as if bubbles of blood in the water. Her eyes began to glaze, and she looked once more at the prince, then threw herself overboard, her body dissolving into foam. The sun rose on the waters, and its beams fell warmly and kindly on the chill sea foam. The Little Mermaid did not feel the touch of death. Rather, in the sunlight overhead she saw hundreds of ethereal beings. They were transparent so that she could see the sails and clouds through them. Their voices were music, but so spirit-like the human ear could not detect the sound, as no eye on earth could see them. They floated on the air, and the Little Mermaid discovered that she was shaped like them, rising up from the foam. "Who are you, toward whom I rise?" she asked, and her voice sounded like those above her, so spiritual that no music on earth could match it. "We are the daughters of the air," they answered. "A mermaid has no immortal soul, and can never get one unless she wins the love of a human being. Her eternal life must depend upon the power outside herself. The daughters of the air do not have an immortal soul either, but they can earn one by their good deeds. We fly to the south, where the hot, poisonous air kills human beings unless we bring cool breezes. We carry the scent of flowers through the air, bringing freshness and healing balm wherever we go. When for 300 years we have tried to do all the good that we can, we are given an immortal soul and a share in mankind's eternal bliss. You, poor little mermaid, have tried with your whole heart to do this too. Your suffering and your loyalty have raised you up into the realm of airy spirits, and now in the course of 300 years, you may earn by your good deeds a soul that will never die. Little Mermaid lifted her clear, bright eyes towards God's sun, and for the first time her eyes were wet with tears. She looked back to the ship, the prince and his bride sadly looking for her, gazing into the foam as if they had known what occurred. Unseen or felt, she kissed the prince's forehead one last time and rose with the other spirits. This is the way that we shall rise to the kingdom of God after 300 years have passed. We may get there even sooner, one spirit whispered. Unseen we fly into the homes of men, where there are children, and for every day on which we find a good child who pleases his parents and deserves their love, God shortens our days of trial. The child does not know when we float through his room, but when we smile at him in approval, 1 year is taken from our 300. But if we see a naughty, mischievous child, we must shed tears of sorrow, and each tear adds a day to the time of our trial.
But remember, once you take on a human shape, you will never be able to become a mermaid again. You will be banished from the ocean kingdom for the rest of your life.
Agreed.
And should your prince find someone else to marry, then at dawn your heart will break in two, and you will turn into nothing more than sea foam.
Agreed.
You should also know that my services don't come cheap. My price is very high. I'll accept only the best you have.
While the story of The Little Mermaid is clearly Christian in theme and purpose, emphasizing the immortal soul of man, would it surprise you to hear that the fairy tale has its origin in an even older Christian tradition? The story of a sea-born girl with the voice of an angel, and the longevity of 3 centuries, and the offer of salvation of an immortal soul. In the annals of Ireland, there is an interesting reference to a mermaid having been captured. In the Annals of the Four Masters, it states, "The age of Christ 558. In this year was taken the mermaid Liban, the daughter of Eochaid, son of Meriad, on the strand of Alarba, in the net of Beowan, son of Inli, the fisherman of Comgal, of Biancar." Meanwhile, in the Annals of Ulster it states, "In this year, the sea wanderer was caught," though it places the incident a decade later at 571. This Liban is noted in the Martyrology of Irish Saints, with the feast day of January 27th. Allow me to share with you the story of Liban, or as she was christened, Muirgin, the Mermaid Saint, as recalled in the Irish Book of the Dun Cow. The good king of Munster, Mairead, son of Cairead, had 2 sons, Eochaid and Rib. The wife of Mairead and the mother of the 2 sons began to take fancy of her son Eochaid, and often solicited him, saying that he should take flight with her. Rib told his brother, rather than to disgrace himself, he should carry her off to another country, and that he himself would join him. Thus the mother and the son eloped with Rib in tow, along with 1,000 men and their flocks and herds. After soothsayers told them it was not fated for the 2 brothers to find settlement together, Rib went his separate way. As for Eochaid, his company reached the plain of Mac Infach, where a tall man ordered them out of the territory, and, not having heeded his threat, the man came back and killed all their horses as they slept. The same man returned in the morning, threatening, quote, "Unless ye quit the land on which ye stand, tonight I will slay all your people." Eochaid answered, "Great mischief hast thou wrought upon us already, to have killed all our horses, without which we cannot, even though we desired it, depart. Angus, the name of the tall man, then gave the company a large horse, to which he loaded all their luggage, and warned them not to unload the horse, nor let it rest, lest it be the death of them all. The company then set off, traveling until they reached Leath Muin in Ulster, in the months of the harvest. They unloaded the mighty horse, but none turned the horse back where it came, and it instead stood with them until a spring broke forth from the earth. Eochaid then made a house and a well with a door on it, and had a woman continually stand watch over it, to keep the waters from flooding over. Now on a certain occasion, the woman did not close the well, and the bramblebush water rose and flooded the land above, creating the Loch Neagh, drowning Eochaid and all his family, with the exception of Liban. While the floodwater had drowned everyone else, Liban survived in an underground chamber of the house along with her lapdog, for a full year being preserved. She prayed one day, "O Lord, happy the one that should be in the salmon's shape, scouring the sea and swimming even as they do." And she was thus transformed into a half-woman, half-salmon, with her canine companion into a sea otter. She then swam and explored the waters of Ireland for 300 years until the time of St. Comgall of Bangor. In these days, Comgall sent Beon Mac Inle to Rome to speak with Pope Gregory and return with a canonical order and rule. As Beon's ship sailed, they heard the singing as if from angels and wondered where it could be coming from. Liban appeared and revealed that it was she who was singing, and when questioned, she spoke of her father and grandfather, then told them that she would head westwards, and in 12 months' time to meet them, and for them to inform Comgall and the other saints of her arrival. "That I will not, unless its price be paid me," said Beowulf. "And what is the price thou askest?" "That I have thee buried in mine own monastery." "Verily thou shalt have that," she replied. Beowulf subsequently returned from the east, and told Comgall with the rest of the clergy the story of the Muirgelt, or Sea Wanderer, the mermaid. Thus the year ran out, and at the place appointed on the coast, the nets were made ready, and she was taken in that of Fergus's net. She was brought to land, her appearance captivating all who saw it. Numbers came to view her, being carried in a vessel of water onto dry land. Like everyone else, the chief of Uí Coinag was there, and he wore a crimson mantle. Her eyes were fixed upon his mantle, and, noticing, told her if she wished it, it could be hers. She refused, however, explaining that on the day her father was drowned, he too wore a crimson mantle, and she blessed him and his successor because of his offer. Then came a man of uncouth countenance, who killed her lapdog, and she said that he should never triumph over anyone but the ignoblest of foes until the time come when he should repent and fast at her monastery. Now arriving at the monastery, there arose a contest for who would have her in his possession. Comgall saying that, since it was in his country that she was caught, she was his. Fergus maintained that since it was into his net that she had chanced, she must be his, while Beowulf again affirmed her to be his property, for so she herself had promised to him. Accordingly, these saints fasted all, and in that concerning this dispute, God should deliver judgment as between them. The next day, as foretold by an angel, 2 wild stags came from Iuri's cairn and carried her to St. Comgall's monastery. There, she was given the choice to receive baptism, yet die immediately, or to live for another 300 years. She chose then to be baptized, and Comgall baptized her with the name Muirgin, that is, Seaborn. The account concludes with, quote, "In that place, wonders and miracles are wrought through her, and there she, after the manner of every other sainted virgin, enjoys honor and reverence, even as God hath bestowed them on her in heaven.